Somewhere out there, buried under sand, jungle, or ocean, are objects and sites that shouldn't make sense. Archaeologists have spent their entire careers studying them, writing papers about them, arguing over them at conferences. And still, when you get right down to it, some of these discoveries leave even the experts saying the same thing: we don't fully know. Not because the evidence is missing, but because what the evidence points to is so strange, so far ahead of its time, or so unlike anything else, that a clean explanation just isn't there yet. Today, we're looking at ancient archaeological mysteries that science still can't fully explain. Let's start with the big one. Number 1, Göbekli Tepe. In the 1990s, on a dusty hilltop in southeastern Turkey, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt began excavating a site that would rewrite the timeline of human civilization. What he found were massive stone pillars, some over 16 feet tall and weighing several tons, arranged in circles and carved with detailed images of animals, foxes, boars, snakes, scorpions, and vultures. It was clearly a place of enormous effort and meaning. And then they dated it. Göbekli Tepe is around 11,000 years old. To put that in perspective, it predates Stonehenge by roughly 6,000 years and the Egyptian pyramids by even more. It was built before pottery, before writing, before the wheel. And here's the part that stunned everyone, apparently before farming and permanent villages had fully taken hold in the region. The old story of civilization went like this. First, humans settled down and started farming. Then, once they had surplus food and free time, they built temples and monuments. Göbekli Tepe seems to flip that on its head. It suggests that large groups of hunter-gatherers came together to build something monumental first, and that the demands of such gatherings, feeding and coordinating all those people, may have actually helped push society towards settled life and agriculture. Think about what that involves. These pillars weren't just stood up in the ground. Many were shaped into a distinctive T-form, decorated with carved arms, hands, and belts, as if they represented stylized human or supernatural figures gathered in a ring. Quarrying limestone of this size using stone tools, shaping it, carving intricate animals into it, and then transporting and raising it all, would have required a workforce, a plan, and some kind of shared belief system strong enough to motivate the effort. And these people had no metal tools, no draft animals, and no written instructions we know of. Who organized this? How did they coordinate the labor? And perhaps strangest of all, why, after generations of use, were parts of the site deliberately backfilled and buried under tons of rubble, almost as if it were being intentionally retired? Each answer archaeologists propose seems to open up new questions, which is exactly why Göbekli Tepe continues to reshape how we think about our own origins. Number 2, the Sacsayhuaman Walls. High in the Andes above the city of Cusco in Peru, the Inca built a fortress complex with walls made of enormous limestone blocks, some weighing well over 100 tons. What makes these walls so astonishing isn't just the size of the stones, it's the precision. The blocks are irregularly shaped with many angles, yet they fit together so tightly that you cannot slide a sheet of paper into the joints between them. There's no mortar holding them together, just stone locked against stone, cut so perfectly that the walls have survived centuries of earthquakes in one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. When the ground shakes, the tightly fitted stones seem to settle back into place rather than collapse. The mystery is how the Inca achieved this level of precision with the tools they're known to have had. They did not use iron or steel tools, and they had no wheeled vehicles or draft animals capable of hauling such colossal weights. The leading theories involve stone hammers, careful trial and error fitting, and enormous amounts of organized human labor, with the blocks possibly ground and test-fitted repeatedly until they matched. Experiments have shown parts of this are plausible, and we know the Inca were master stoneworkers who built extensively across their empire. But the sheer scale here, the weight of the largest blocks, the way each irregular stone was custom fitted to its neighbors like pieces of a colossal three-dimensional puzzle, and the near seamless perfection of the joints continue to impress modern engineers, some of whom openly admit they'd struggle to reproduce this precision even with today's equipment. And that combination of enormous weight and delicate accuracy, achieved without the wheel or iron, is what keeps Sacsayhuaman firmly in the category of things we can partly explain but not fully replicate. Number 3. The Nazca Lines. Sometime around 2,000 years ago, the Nazca people of southern Peru created something extraordinary across the desert floor. Enormous drawings. A hummingbird, a monkey with a spiraling tail, a spider, a condor, along with hundreds of straight lines and geometric shapes stretching for miles. Some of these figures are hundreds of feet across. And here's the thing that grabs everyone. They're really only recognizable from high above. From the ground, they look like faint paths scratched into the dirt. From the air, they resolve into precise, well-proportioned images. The Nazca had no aircraft and no known way to view their own work from above. Yet the proportions are remarkably accurate. So how and why did they make them? The lines themselves were created by removing the reddish iron oxide-coated pebbles on the surface to reveal the lighter, paler ground underneath, essentially drawing by subtraction. Because this stretch of desert is one of the driest and most windless places on Earth, with very little rain or erosion, the shallow lines have survived largely undisturbed for 2,000 years. The most accepted explanation for the accuracy involves scaling up smaller sketches using a grid of stakes and ropes as guides, much like an artist enlarging a drawing square by square. And experiments have shown people can indeed reproduce large, accurate figures this way with simple tools. But the deeper question of purpose is where the real debate lives. Were they sacred pathways, meant to be walked in procession during ceremonies? Were they linked to water and fertility, desperate appeals for rain in a brutally arid land? Some researchers have explored possible astronomical alignments, while others connect them to rituals and the gods the Nazca worshipped. The truth may be that different lines served different purposes over the centuries. What's certain is that we're still learning. New figures continue to turn up, including a cat figure revealed during conservation work in 2020 that had sat unnoticed on a hillside for 2 millennia, and modern surveys using aerial imagery keep finding more. Now for the supporting cast. These are a bit shorter, but no less puzzling. The Antikythera mechanism. In 1901, sponge divers exploring a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera pulled up a corroded lump of bronze that turned out to contain intricate interlocking gears. Now considered the oldest known analog computer, this device from around 2,000 years ago could model the movements of the sun and moon, predict eclipses, and track cycles of astronomical events. Nothing of comparable mechanical complexity appears again for well over 1,000 years, which raises the haunting question of how such knowledge could simply vanish. The Longyu Caves. In 1992, in eastern China, villagers pumping water out of what they thought were bottomless ponds revealed a series of enormous man-made caverns carved into solid rock. The caves feature towering chambers, precise parallel chisel marks covering the walls, and carefully worked pillars. They appear to be ancient, yet there is no clear historical record explaining who carved them, when exactly, how such a massive undertaking was accomplished, or why. What's especially strange is the silence. A project of this scale would have required a huge, organized workforce, and yet no historical text seems to mention it at all. An enormous amount of stone was removed, and no one has found where it all went, or what the caves were originally meant to be. The Baghdad Battery. In Mesopotamia, in modern-day Iraq, archaeologists found clay jars containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod, dating to around 2,000 years ago. When a replica was filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar, It produced a small electrical voltage. Whether it was ever actually used to generate electricity is hotly debated. Some scholars think it was simply a storage vessel, but the specific arrangement of copper, iron, and an acidic liquid is a curious coincidence that keeps the discussion alive. The Gate of the Sun. At Tiwanaku, high in the Bolivian Andes, stands a massive gateway carved from a single block of stone, decorated with intricate figures and what many believe may be a calendar or astronomical symbols. The civilization that built it left no written records we can read, so the precise meaning of its carvings and the full purpose of the site remain subjects of interpretation and debate. And finally, the Voynich manuscript. Sometime in the early 1400s, someone produced a book of around 240 pages, written in a script that has never been identified, filled with drawings of unfamiliar plants, astronomical charts, and strange illustrations. Codebreakers, linguists, and modern computer analysis have all tried to crack it. The text shows consistent patterns that suggest it may follow the rules of a real language rather than being random gibberish. Yet no one has been able to read a single confirmed word of it. It sits today in a university library, a book that everyone can look at and no one can understand. So there you have it. Ancient archaeological mysteries that our ancestors left behind, sometimes thousands of years ago, that science still can't fully explain. Göbekli Tepe rewrote the story of when and why civilization began. The walls of Sacsayhuaman fit together with a precision that still impresses engineers. The Nazca drew for the sky without ever seeing it, and a corroded lump of bronze from a shipwreck turned out to be a computer no one could match for 1,000 years. It makes you wonder how much of our own past we've truly reconstructed, and how much we're still guessing at from fragments. These sites weren't built by people with our machines, our tools, or our knowledge. They were built by people working with their hands, their observation and beliefs that made sense in worlds we can barely glimpse now. And maybe that's the real mystery. Not just how they did it, but how much they understood that we've since forgotten, and how much still lies waiting under the sand for someone to dig up and puzzle over all over again.